Hi, friends, and I want to welcome you to the first attempt at the Open Table online. Okay, so here we are. Had we met in person for our weekly worship gathering, I would have led the discussion this week because Dale would have been away at a wedding. Now, of course, since we made those plans, things have changed quite a bit, and now here we are. Now, a lot of people have been able to simply film the same kinds of worship services that they always do in their worship spaces and put it out into the ether for the consumption of the masses. And that's a wonderful way to do church and a way for people to reconnect at church in ways that they haven't before. So there's a very neat sort of cultural thing going on right now. But that being said, our worship space is also a business, and for the safety and concern for that business as well, we weren't going to meet in there. Now, that gave us an awesome opportunity to try a new way of producing worship online. So here was the idea. Kind of like a community art project. We knew what the topic was going to be, and then we had people from our community send in video in whatever format it happened to be of them, and we have put it together to be a sort of patchwork, a real community effort, something new. You'll hear a little bit from me later, and you'll notice that we weren't going for high production. We wanted all of us to be able to contribute our voices and our gifts. I read a book years ago now by a woman named Constance Cherry, who's a professor of worship arts, and she said that in a good worship service, God would speak and we would respond. God would fill our presence and we would react. It would be God's movement in ours, God and then us. And so I thought, let's do that here and now. Now, some of the topics we will handle from the book that we were going through have to do with the breath or wind of God, the air around us. Let's imagine that all around us is the presence of this thing that we call God. And we breathe it in and breathe it out. And be aware of our own breath as we respond to the sense that God is around us. So breathe in and breathe out.
Father, I adore you. Lay my life before you. How I love you. Jesus, I adore you. Lay my life before you. How I love you. Spirit, I adore you. Lay my life before you. How I love you. Lay my life before you. Father, I adore you. Lay my life before you. Lay my life before you. Jesus, I adore you. Lay my
Spirit of God, bring forth the new morning and fill us with praise. Awaken your world and bring it to life. Wind of God, blow through the dust and the clay of the ground and renew the face of the earth. Breath of God, breathe into us life, and may we respond by living fully and freely as we have been created to live. Spirit of God, bring forth the new morning and fill us with praise. Amen.
Well, as I had mentioned, we have been working our way through this book, What is the Bible by Rob Bell. And I'm going to be focusing today on chapters 39 and 40. There are these two big questions that Bell poses in chapters 39 and 40. He asks, is the Bible inerrant? And is the Bible inspired. So we got to kind of unpack those words, right? Is the Bible inerrant? When we say inerrant, generally speaking, what we're talking about is that every word in the Bible is it is without error. That the Bible is inerrant means that it doesn't have any errors in it. Is it 100% correct? Is it 100% accurate? This would be an important topic if you're talking about, do I order the things in my life after what it says in the Bible? I mean, what if there are contradictions in the Bible? What if there are things in the Bible that I simply can't subscribe to, I don't believe in? We've talked about those kinds of things in the past. But when confronted with that question, is the Bible without error? Rob Bell has kind of an interesting response. He asked the question, did Mozart's symphony win? In your estimation, has Mozart prevailed? Did Mozart's songs take the cake? He says those are odd questions. He goes on to say, what you do with Mozart's music is you listen to it, you experience it, maybe you study it or play it, but mostly you enjoy it. He says in the same way that, did Mozart win? It's a categorical problem. Winning or losing is the wrong category for him. In the same way, saying that the Bible is without error is the wrong categorical way of talking. It's not about, is the Bible inerrant or not? Is it totally right or not? The Bible is this vast library of writing. We know that to be true. Poems and prayers and historical accounts and parables and dreams, songs, lineages and all kinds of things, different ways of writing. It spans millennia of writers. And most of it was spoken before it was ever written down. And then it was translated. So is it without error? Well, that's a silly question, isn't it? In fact, Bell says this. The writings of the Bible are doing something far more significant than trying to write letters and books and tell stories without errors. To describe the Bible as inerrant, then, is to use a word that actually minimizes the importance of what these writers were up to. Is the Bible right or wrong? Well, it's inerrant in that it is a collection of books. It is without error in that it is lots of different people writing about lots of different things for lots of different people for lots of different reasons. And what we've gone through over and over in our exploration of this book and of other topics in our worship services is to talk about how when we get at who was the writer, who was that person writing to, then we can start getting at some deeper meanings. What were they up to? What were they trying to say? They were trying to explain who and what they are, who and what God is, and how God is interacting with who we are. And when we dig at that, we start to get at some really cool stuff. Well, that takes us to the second chapter I want to look at, chapter 40. He asks, well, is the Bible inspired? The Bible is God-breathed. Inspired. Breathed into by God. The breath of God becomes a theme that starts at the very beginning of Genesis. The wind of God is sweeping in the first creation myth over the surface of the water, and God speaks, and it is. And that's how creation begins. And then in the second creation episode, God scoops up the clay and the dust in the ground and breathes into it life. And that's where we come from, the myth goes.
A reading from Genesis 2, 1-7. At the time when Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, there was still no wild bush on the ground, nor had any wild plant sprung up, for Yahweh had not yet sent rain to the earth, and there was no human being to till the soil. Instead, a flow of water would well up from the ground and irrigate the soil. So Yahweh fashioned an earth creature out of the clay of the earth and blew into its nostrils the breath of life. And the earth creature became a living being.
Breathe on me, breath of God. Fill me with life anew. that I may love what thou dost love, and do what thou wouldst do. Breathe on me, breath of God, my heart is pure and true. Until with thee I will one will to do and to endure.
In the Old Testament, ruach is the word for God's Spirit. It also means breath or wind. In the New Testament, pneuma, breath, wind, spirit. And all throughout the Bible, we have this sense that God's Spirit, God's essence, is the breath of the wind. It's not lost on me that this whole video is being made right now because of our all collective newfound sense of fear of contagion. And so the irony of talking about breath or being breathed on in this cultural moment, I get it. Much the same that if we were in Dayton last year, right after the tornadoes went through, and we talked about the wind of God, the wind blowing over the surface of the deep, or those kinds of things, that would have either felt ironic or insensitive or something. But I think that actually gets at the power of what the biblical writers are doing. What is the essence or the Spirit of God that is infused in us, the essence of who we are, is near as our breath or is mighty as the wind. That God is here, blowing in this place, capable of major things, but also intimate. And God's Spirit, the very one that spoke order into chaos in Genesis, is speaking order into our lives now. And so we participate in, move with the wind of God when we look at the chaotic places and begin to build order. When we see the brokenness of the world around us, the people being spiritually or culturally quarantined long before the last couple of weeks, being told to sit down and shut up and be quiet, with their backs against the wall, people that have nothing left to give. In that chaos, God's wind is blowing and building order. And in our hearts, with God's Spirit being as near as a breath, we can participate in that same effort to build more order into the chaos, and that would be building God's kingdom here where we find ourselves. That would be incarnationally living, that we participate in the movement of God around us. Maybe in some ways twofold, that you know that you are infused with some of the very Spirit of God. That's what gives you life and being and who you are. And that you see the places in the world where God's wind is blowing now, and you participate in that movement. And then finally, where we started, this topic of what is the Bible, and talking about, well, is the Bible, without errors, is it totally right, or how should I read it? When we get caught up in the nuances of the stories, or trying to prove these ancient things, we've missed the point. Because, as Bell is trying to tell us in his book, that's not what the original writers wanted us to take away from it. That's categorically wrong. They were being moved by the Spirit of God, and they're writing it down. We get to be the receivers of it then, and inspired by where God was moving in their lives, and allowing it now to instruct us on where we're going to go with our own.
Breathe on me, breath of God, till I am wholly thine, until this earthly part of me glows with thy fire divine. Breathe on me, breath of God, so shall I constant be, and live with thee the perfect life of thine eternity.
Spirit of God, bring forth the new morning and fill us with praise. Awaken your world and bring it to life. Wind of God, blow through the dust and the clay of the ground and renew the face of the earth. Breath of God, breathe into us life, and may we respond by living fully and freely as we have been created to live. Spirit of God, bring forth the new morning and fill us with praise. Amen.
Spirit, I adore you. Lay my life before you.